Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for joining us for another indie-friendly conversation. And as you can see again, I have on my Jackson State hoodie with the Jackson State University bass drum head behind me. So guess what that means? It means I'm about to talk to another Jackson State legend. He is Mr. Cecil Cross. He marched in the War and Thunder drum section. Say hello to the people, Mr. Cross.
Hello, everybody. This is Cecil Cross. War and Thunder from 73 to 77.
War and Thunder from 73 to 77. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you saw in my last conversation with the founder of War and Thunder, Aaron Thompson, War and Thunder is the drum line at Jackson State University. The Sonic Boom of the South is the name of the marching band. In case any of you all are not familiar with HBCU bands, so I'm gonna be speaking with Mr. Cross about some things that he did in his era of marching in the Sonic Boom and in War and Thunder. So we'll get right into it, Mr. Cross. Give us a little background as in regards to your music upbringing. I know we spoke earlier, and you told me that you come from a family of musicians. So how did you get started with your love of music?
Well, I should have grabbed a picture of my mom as well. Hold on, let me get her. Can't leave her out.
Get your mom, yes, sir.
Okay, here we go. Well, it started with both my parents. I started with piano lessons from my mom at about 6 years old. This is my beautiful mom. She was a piano and voice teacher for many, many years. She taught at several schools in the state, but most prominently Bay Springs for a few years with my dad. And then he went over to Heidelberg first to start a band program at Southside High School. And then my mom followed him a year later with the rest of the family, actually. We all went over across the other side of the county, Southside High. And I have my dad's picture right here behind me. That's where I have him mounted on this picture. And you can see, if you can see that, it says E.C. Cross Senior Band Hall. It's named in his honor. So that's a pretty good legacy to have to follow. I've never been as good as him. Not in arranging or playing or in any of those areas. You know, they were truly experts. So that's how I got my musical start.
Well, that's a blessing because to have parents to start you off with, well, sometimes, you know, when your parents are musicians, a lot of times the children don't have a choice.
That was it. That was it. None of us had the choice at first. In other words, you were going to learn it. If you go off to college and major in English or history or whatever, you'll still have a music background.
Right. So did you graduate from, you said Southside High?
Bay Springs High. During the integration period, yeah, I had to go back on my side of the county. We never moved. We always stayed there in Bay Springs, but it was a 20-mile trek every day to Southside. But during the integration period, because of my address, I had to go back to Bay Springs High, which that was a good thing. I enjoyed it.
Bay Springs High. So what ensembles did you participate in high school?
Well, in high school, at the very beginning of the year, it was marching band season, of course. You know, you're getting ready for your football games and so forth. So I played in the high school band and the marching band first. I auditioned on both the clarinet and the percussion, but, you know, I wound up in marching band. I played percussion. And then in concert season, I made the concert band my first year. You know, because our band was cut about in half for concert, just 60 people in concert band. There was 128 marching band members there at Bay Springs High, which incidentally was the exact same number that Jackson State was using during that particular time, 128. And so I got my start playing both percussion, the clarinet section. Then we also had a jazz band. My first year, yeah, we had a jazz band. And I played tenor saxophone in the jazz band, and continued to play tenor sax and sometimes alto sax. We had what you call a jazz band, a jazz lab band, by this time we had a new director, Mr. Jamie Fauché, and he allowed me to play both, you know, just depending on the tune, tenor sax, alto sax, or even backup trumpet.
Oh, wow. So that's, how many instruments is that?
There's just a few. There's just a few, especially for a band director's son. I mean, my dad says if you pick up an instrument and he heard you, then it was on you. Gonna have to learn how to read the music for that instrument, because, for instance, it was no trouble with the trumpet because, as you know, trumpet and clarinet are both B-flat instruments. But, you know, when I picked up a trombone, then that's number one, learning to play the bass clef and learning to play. The easy part was when they said concert B-flat, that's what you're playing on trombone, concert B-flat. So it wasn't really a big problem there either. But the valve instruments, well, once you play the trumpet, you can play baritone, French horn, things like that. You can do that pretty much.
Well, that is remarkable. And thank you to your parents for getting you exposure to these instruments at an early age, because that really helps, especially when you can grow into your musicianship as opposed to starting at the high school level or even at college. I mean, you really had the chance to grow and mature as a young musician. So I think that's phenomenal. So how did you make the switch from playing wind instruments to drums? Were you playing drums in high school as well, percussion?
Yes, it wasn't a switch. It was inclusive. It was all. Matter of fact, my sister, who became a J-Set at Jackson State, she was a percussionist too. She played melodic percussions in high school, and she was awesome. Frances, well, she's Frances Ashley now. She was Frances Cross then, but she was an awesome melodic percussion player in high school. So, and she was a pianist, but it wasn't a transition from one instrument to the other. It was all inclusive. So, you know, my major was actually percussion. So it wasn't anything difficult. You know, I can still pick up the clarinet, saxophone, and all that, but I can pick up a pair of drumsticks. And I think for my age, I can handle myself pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you at Bay Springs High School. So college is coming around. So your senior year, do you have to narrow it down to what schools you want to go to, or was Jackson State always kind of where you knew you were going?
I'm going to say something that might shock you. I knew that Jackson State had the better band and music program. I knew that going in. But, I mean, I always had Alcorn on my radar, and here's why.
Oh, no.
If you remember, that's why I said this may shock you. You remember the guy who used to come up to the campus to repair the instruments, Red. Everybody calls him Red. His name is Henry Rogers. He and his father took me to Alcorn when we were like 6th or 7th grade. And I fell in love with that campus and that atmosphere. And from then on, I was thinking in my mind, I got to convince my parents to let me go to Alcorn. Because, I mean, it's like they have a hatred for Alcorn. They didn't really hate Alcorn, but it's, you know, the rivalry that exists, the two biggest state rivalries, you know, in the states to us was Alcorn and Jackson State. And they had a decent band. It wasn't great, but that was before even Sam Griffin went out there. It wasn't so much of the band. I said, well, I can be in the band, but I really want to go out there because I just fell in love with the campus and the way the students, you know, attitude was toward their school. But gradually I came back to being a Jackson State fan.
Well, we're glad you came on home.
And I had offers from Southern Miss, Southern University, because my dad had connections to all those places. So I had some offers, but of course you go where the biggest offer is, and it was Jackson State for me.
So when you auditioned for Jackson State, was it understood that you were going to be a multi-instrumentalist, playing the clarinet and the drums? So what did they expect of you when you got there?
They really did not. They only expected me to play clarinet because I didn't audition at Jackson State. My dad was president of the Magnolia Band Directors Association, which was the black band directors of the state during this period of segregation. So band directors came to my house often. And this particular night, Mr. Harold Halton, Mr. Joe Goree, and Edward Duplessis, they all came to my house during the spring. My picture fell. During the spring of the year, while I was playing in concert band, because we were getting ready for state contest, and Mr. Duplessis heard me in my room practicing my clarinet. And he came and interrupted me and says, "Can you run some scales for me?" And I played, I guess 8 or 9 scales, my chromatic scale and so forth. And he said, "Well, go ahead and get back to your practice." And I did. Didn't think anything of it, because I was also thinking, well, in about a month, my dad's taking some students up to Jackson State to audition. So I was trying to stay up on my chops, my drum chops, and playing them, xylophone solos and things like this. But I get a letter in the mail 2 weeks after their visit to our home offering me a scholarship in band, a clarinet scholarship. So I didn't try to clarify matters. It was a scholarship. I took it.
All right. I know that's right. It's a scholarship. Hey, what better thing can you ask for as a student coming out of high school?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And my dad, he said, just clear it up when you get there. He said, if you take it and get all your paperwork in, then you can clear it up when you get there. So that's what I did. I took his advice.
I got you. So when you get to Jackson State, did you start on clarinet when marching band season started, or how did you clear it up?
I didn't even get a chance to try it on percussion. Yeah, when I got there, I was issued the music for clarinet. Of course, I naturally took my clarinet, but I was issued all the music for clarinet, and I just act like nothing had happened. I just went ahead and learned the music and re-auditioned, like everybody do for tryouts for marching band. And I was like 4th. Let's see, there was Collier Otis, there was Michael Magruder, Booker Wolf, and then next was me. I was 4th chair. No, 5th chair. There was a young lady, a real tall young lady that was ahead of me. Yeah, so I was like 5th chair.
Okay, so you play clarinet for how long in the marching band?
1 year. 1 year.
Okay. 1 year. And so now what made you say, all right, well, for marching band, I want to get on them drums?
Well, I declared my major as percussion. So Mr. Duplessis automatically put me in the section. It was all, go ahead and try out for percussion section since that's your major. I said, okay. I said, I play wherever y'all want me to play. He said, go ahead and try out for percussion section. And actually, when I tried out, I didn't make it. I was like a substitute. And I kind of protested because we didn't try out by what I would think would be traditional means. I came from a high school where, reading music was paramount. So I'm thinking that, okay, we're going to go in this room. He's going to put some music in front of us, and whoever can play this piece or sight read this piece or whatever would get the spot. There was never music. It was like, okay, let's play the series. And so the guys were flashing. And so, cause I was trying out actually on cymbals, they were flashing and doing stuff, and they could handle their business, and he outdid me, the guy who I guess I had the challenge to get in. But when I tried out, the first time I was just a substitute. So I tried to try out so I can be on the field, and the guy just outdid me, but he couldn't read a lick of music. So I kind of protested. I went down to the office, and I kind of let it slip out that we got guys in the section couldn't read music, and Dr. Robinson got involved, and she told Mr. Duplessis about it, and they came up to the percussion room, and we had a little test going on. So I wrote out parts of the series on the blackboard, and just and she said, "Well, can you play that, young man?" And the person couldn't play it. And this is like a junior. He's been playing it 3 years. And looking at it on the board, he couldn't play it. So that helped prove my point. So I got a spot after that, because she really got onto him and said, hey, percussionists, they're musicians too. They should be able to read like trumpet players, clarinet players, flute. You know, they're musicians too. And so everybody didn't get kicked out of the section, but I did get a spot because of that.
So what happened to the other guy then? They cut him? Oh,
they cut. I felt bad for him, but they cut him, and he was a good guy too. That wasn't so bad about it. He was I really liked him, but you know, she picked him out. She just pointed, and they cut him. And next year, you know, the guy, he was a very likable guy, and they wanted to make a spot for him. So next year, I had moved up to tenor. They said, if you move back to cymbals, and we can put, I think it was Larry Wright. We put Larry back on tenor, then there would be a snare spot for this guy because he couldn't play anything but snare. And I said, no, I'm sorry. You know, it was hard work for me. You know, they knew the series because a lot of them from Jackson. They were from Jackson, so they were within earshot of guys who could play the series. And I never knew it, you know. And so what kept me from learning it as quickly was there was nothing written. You know, you couldn't go learn it because you couldn't take it to your room at night because there was nothing there. There was nothing written. They never wrote it down. So that was another hindrance for me.
Now, one of the things that I've come to appreciate about the way War and Thunder handles learning is that of course, drummers are musicians too. So reading music is always going to be an important thing that any musician would have to learn how to do. But knowing that long series is not written down, I think that's one of the unique things that makes it more appreciated when you can come in and learn it and know it and play it with that feeling that you can't get from reading it on a sheet of paper. Some things, because at the end of the day, when you pick up a sheet of paper and you read music, that's just like reading a book. But when you put that book down and say it from the heart, then you can say what you need to say with feeling and with emotion. And I always liken speaking to playing drums because it is a conversation going. And but of course, you know, reading music in a college band is definitely going to be the main thing that's especially that the band directors are going to want to know if a student can do. But that's one of the things I came to appreciate about it because I was just like you. I didn't know series. I'm from Houston. So right. I didn't know it. No high schools in Houston played it. And when I got to Jackson State and I heard the upperclassmen play it for the first time, I was like, man, there's no way I'm going to learn all of this, man.
Well, that ran a lot of students away. That ran a lot of good musicians away. We had a guy from Meridian, Hopkins. What was Benny Hopkins. I'll call his name. Maybe he'll see this interview. But that was one of the problems for him. He says, he's from Meridian, you know, from the same type of system that I was. And it's not that you're going to read it to always play it, but you have a reference point. If you go to your room at night and you want to practice over the series, and you say, wait a minute, how did that next thing go? And then you can look at it and play it. You can memorize it. It's kind of like memorizing a poem. You know, when your teacher gives you a poem, she don't just say the poem and say, okay, you go memorize this, what I just said. She tells you what page it is in the book. Okay, I want you to learn this poem by Langston Hughes. In this book, it's on page thus and so. And you look over it and you practice and you practice and you look over and you practice and practice, but you always look back for a reference point. And so by it not being written down, the drummers who came in, who was not used to just listening and playing, they had no reference point. And so it was a disadvantage for them, especially if you weren't from Jackson or Kent or from a surrounding area where it was being played or being heard. And that was the thing that sometimes separated maybe what they wanted in the section as opposed to some of the guys who actually get into the section. Because that musicianship, believe it or not, it has shown in the past to have something to do with character. Not saying that everybody who came and learned the series had bad character, but there were some bad characters that came along, and they had been doing that all the way through high school, because a lot of high school band directors, I talked to one a few years ago. He said, man, I never wrote a percussion part. He said, I just let them play. He said, what they felt and it sounded good, we went with it. So he never did try to get them to learn how to, know rudiments or read music or any of those things that would have been a part of. And I was like, well, yeah, but you're making it where your drummers can't get a scholarship in college unless maybe they have a really good academic record. But if you have both, your chances are better, and then they really enjoy, they feel good about themselves if they learn how to read music. That's what I found from teaching.
So, of course, we were talking about reading and learning how to play music, reading versus listening and playing. So you more of a reader, which made you a writer as well.
Right.
So, of course, for those of you all who know anything about Jackson State's traditional cadences, the cadence cross type and cross confusion, cha, 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 doom, doom, doom. This gentleman, Mr. Cecil Cross, helped to write that and create that. And you had some help with those two cadences, right? Right.
Guy named Dwight Meredith, we call him Tighthead. For a long time, I never knew Dwight's real name. I just knew Dwight. I didn't know his real name, but his name is Dwight Meredith. Of course, he changed his name later on to Sawandi, where he had a different religious affiliation as well. But we stayed close. Sadly, very sadly for me, he passed away about years ago. Yeah.
How long ago?
It's been, let me see. I got it in here. My brother sent it to me. It's been close to 2 years, if not 2 years. Let's see here. It was, I can't pull it back up that quick, but it's been about 2 years now. It's been more than a year for sure. And of course, it wasn't COVID related, but he had an illness that he had come down with, through the years. And but he continued to work. He didn't want to be like a disabled person. He continued to work. He continued to teach. He was one of my daughter's teachers at Morrow High School. But he was a vibrant young guy. But his hands could move so quick. Sometimes you couldn't hardly. It looked like you just seeing a blur, But he helped to construct that particular cadence.
Oh wow! And it's two cadences: cross tight and cross confusion. Both of you all created those two cadences together.
No, we just created the first one, the cross tight.
Cross tight.
I did cross confusion by myself. Cross confusion came from my high school.
Okay.
There's a part of it, the very first part of it. I wrote that when I was in the 11th grade. And then it followed up with the tenor drum. Dum, 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 dum. I wrote that in the 11th grade because I was thinking about how soul sounded, with snares. Then the tenors came behind it kind of in sequence, and then the bass drum. So I wrote that in the 11th grade. So my high school band played it when I was in the 11th and 12th grade.
Well, that's one of my favorite traditional cadences to play. Did you come up with the movements as well?
No, just a few of them. The guys were, and even with cross type, with all the cadences, the other guys who, like you were saying, who knew how to play like the series from just listening and playing, they were good at movements and things like that. But now on confusion, yes, I did. I came up with the part where like da da da. Because that's what we did in high school. We're actually doing that in my high school. We played that just like that. We didn't play the confusion part where it should be snare, tenor, bass, like that. We didn't play that part in high school. It would have been difficult to play that and march at the same time because I came from a high step high school as well. We were predominantly white school, but we were high step high school.
Got you, got you. So that, along with what else did you help to bring to Jackson State? Did you write parts for songs? Did you write any other cadences, warm-ups, anything like that?
I wrote a few other cadences. I wrote one and it was so lame. My roommate said, "We can't play that." It was just, it was chop, 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 and then we finally got to this part like rap, ba-da-doom. And that's supposed to be War and Thunder, like rap, that's war, ba-da-doom, that's thunder. And guess who plays it now?
So, that's Southern cadence.
That's Southern. They call it Midnight. Well, I found out later that someone from Jackson took it there because my son-in-law played drums at Southern. And he said he heard them. He said he heard my name. So when he met my daughter, and she said what her dad's name, and her dad played, percussion at Jackson State. And she said, "What's his name?" And that's when they first met. And he goes, "Oh, he wrote Midnight." And I said, "Midnight?" One of my students had told me that the cadence was called Midnight. I said, "Man, that sounds just like War and Thunder." I said, and really, Forrest Garden, he was a close friend. He was my roommate, and we played in wind chime together. He said, "We can't play that." I said, "Why, man?" He said, "That thing is sorry." He said, "It's lame." He said, "It's too lame." He said, "They ain't had no power."
So how did it get from Jackson State to Southern? Who took what they call Midnight from Jackson State to Southern? Who's responsible for that?
I'm not sure. To this day, I don't know who took it there, but we tried it, in the band hall a couple of times. Not the whole section, but some of us tried playing it, and maybe just word got around because high school students were constantly coming in and going out to listen to us, especially Jim Hill students. So it could have possibly been someone who graduated from Jim Hill or Lanier or somewhere and went to Southern. Because like I said, my son-in-law graduated from Callaway when Mr. Mitchell was band director, and he went to Southern, And so it could have gone. And then I taught a student at Lanier, Jesse, and he went to Southern, and he even took some of the stuff like what you call shrimp and noodle from Lanier. He took that there and tried to get them to play that. He said they couldn't do it. But anyway, that's how cadences kind of get around the circuit. Guys from different areas, maybe somebody from Louisiana came up here and shared something and vice versa.
Right. That's always interesting to know because the HBCU bands are so interconnected to where ideas travel very quickly. And obviously back in those days, because that's one of Southern's staple marching cadences.
It is. They've cleaned it up real good.
Yeah. So how similar does it sound to what you wrote?
Quite. They didn't change very much. I like the sticking they did. I didn't have a sticking for it. I just had the sound because I knew that if I took it to our section, the guys would come up with the sticking, which they, just like they did for the other cadences that I wrote and like the series, many times they wanted to give me credit for writing the series, and I just tell anybody I never wrote the series, originated the series. I put it on paper so that it'll be easier to learn. And I don't think I was the first one to put it on paper, but there was no copies of it when I got there. So I was just determined that it was going to be in writing. So that's how, I get the credit for jotting it down. Got you.
So when you got there, how long was the series when you were marching? Because, of course, everybody who's heard it knows that it's quite lengthy. It's quite lengthy. But was it the 13 that we know now, or was it more shorter? Or,
it was shorter. Yes, you didn't have African waltz. Provine was just added the very year that I came. It was my sophomore year actually. It was added that year. Provine. Earl Davis was a section leader. He too was from Meridian. I say Meridian because that was kind of my second home. I graduated from Bay Springs High. My family is from Meridian, but I claim Bay Springs as my dear sweet home. But Earl Davis had been to the military, come out and went to school on the GI Bill. But he was an excellent drummer, and he was a music major. But he added Provine because we heard it, or at least he heard it, played by Provine High School, and just added it to the end of our cadence. And then he added the sticking to it, blop, 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 blop. He put the sticking onto it because that was kind of a staple for Jackson State too. It was like that was the only sticking we had is it go back and forth like this, and that was the only sticking back in those days.
Did y'all make the J too?
No, we didn't. We sure didn't.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's interesting to know.
Yeah, they cleaned up. The sticking looks so much better now than when we were there. We could not compete with the drummers like you guys, your generation, and the guys. Our class could not compete with that.
Hey, but the foundation that you guys laid is what we needed in order to compete at the level that we compete at today. So,
right.
that's what this interview is all about, talking about that foundation. And you were there from 73 to 77. Right. So how many instruments within the percussion section did you play?
I played cymbals, then I played tenor, and then I played snare just a little bit, like during parade seasons after the season was over. I played a little snare. And that was about it. That was about it. I didn't play enough snare to say, oh, he was the main snare player, I mean, I could because in high school I played snare and tenor and timbales. We didn't have quads. We had timbales. I played that. But I didn't play a lot. I could play the snare. I could play it. I feel like I could play it quite well. But, I just wasn't one of the main snare drummers.
Got you. So you graduated from Jackson State with a degree in music education, right?
Actually, I didn't. I graduated with a degree in interdisciplinary studies.
Okay.
I dropped out. I got married, and I was going back to college for a few, semesters, and I go back, and it took me years to finish. And so I went up there, and I was trying to fill out a schedule to start again. And a guy up in the tower says, "What you trying to take?" And I said, "I'm trying to take these courses right here so I can go ahead and graduate." He said, "You don't need courses." He said, "You have 216 hours. What you trying to do?" And so he said, "You just need to request a diploma, request graduation." And I did. I actually never heard from him. But when I used my transcript for jobs, it was accepted.
Oh, okay.
Accepted as a college graduate. So, and matter of fact, I did, receive a certificate saying, "Okay, you have graduated. Now you can do this or that." And by that time, I was so old. I said, "I'm already, retired by this time. What do I need to do with a diploma now?"
Right.
I had already been a band director by that time.
How long had it been since you went back and got the actual piece of paper?
It was like 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like 20 years. I was going back and forth to school whenever I could, whenever I could afford it or had the time. And it took about 20 years.
Hey, it's better late than never.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, you are a graduate.
But so nobody ever told me that I couldn't teach or I couldn't be a band director because of that. Because when they saw the transcript, they were satisfied with that. My transcript kind of told it all.
So you ended up being a band director at a couple schools and at a few different levels, right? Were you ever at the middle school level?
I worked with middle school students at the request of some of the teachers, but I wasn't actually hired as a band director at those schools. I just volunteered. You know, they said, can you help me with my percussion? And sometimes when I got there, they found out that I knew other instruments and I would help out in those areas too. But probably the longest stint was Lanier as an assistant with Dr. Castro. And he's a fantastic teacher and motivator. And he never thought he was, but you know, I said, well, look at the students you produced. You know, we were at a game one night. This is funny. We were playing against Provine, and Carlton Williams had left East Florida and come to Provine. Provine had gone like a year or two without a band director. So he came there. I mean, his first year, he was popping. So his band was just playing. We were playing back and forth across the field, and then his trombone section stood up and played. He said, and Dr. Caston says, man, I can't believe these guys just, I taught them and they come back and be band director and just wearing me out. You know, and my statement was like, that's your fault. You taught them. So he taught some great band directors, man. I mean, some guys that really knew what they were doing.
Well, that's great. So what are you up to now these days? Are you still teaching music? Are you still involved in music at all?
Just a little bit. I teach private lessons. I'm teaching my grandson, as a matter of fact, to play trumpet. Just repaired his trumpet yesterday for him. But yeah, I'm doing some private lesson teaching, and I had done that through the years, even when I wasn't involved directly in music as a teacher at school. I still taught private lessons, and they weren't all percussion lessons. Some were anywhere from clarinet, sax to trumpet and stuff like that, even trombone. And I did serve as band director. A guy wanted me to start a band for him up at Leake County, and I started a band for him. That's why I keep my little pictures and stuff. You can see behind me, that's a Lanier band hat right there, band shape.
Yeah, I see it. I see
so
it.
That's me and my beautiful wife right there. And then here's Mr. Duplessis. And then this is me.
Got you.
So, and I got Dr. Caston's picture somewhere that I thought I had Doc's picture over here. It's up on the wall, but I always keep a picture of him, you know. He's my mentor. You know, I always say I want to be like him and my dad, you know. And I met him at my house because, like I said, they used to converge on at the house.
Right, right. Hey, well, look, it's a pleasure speaking with you because we hear the name Cecil Cross coming through, you know, One Thunder, and you helped to lay that foundation right after Aaron Thompson. You know, you were right there the year after he graduated. So you kept that foundation growing and growing and built upon what was there. So I just want to say thank you for your contributions to One Thunder, to the Sonic Boom of the South. And I don't know if you know, but WT is 50 years old.
Wow, I gave it some thought. Somebody mentioned that. Yeah. I had a lot of help. I mean, I may have been given credit because I wrote things down on paper, but the guys I was in section with, and I'm gonna name a few, you know, when I was a freshman, the only freshman who made the section was, my roommate, Forrest Garden, made it on bass drum. He could have made it on any drum. He liked the bass drum. And then we had Kenneth Morris, who we call him Crow, tenor drummer. He made it. Rick Benford from Belzona, the only freshman snare drummer that year. And of course, both the cymbal players were freshmen because the other cymbal players had graduated. So those are some guys, but you know, there were a lot of guys that were really good, like Larry Wright, who became section leader. You know, we just had a lot of good guys in the section. That matter of fact, the guy who was sheriff of Rankin County Sheriff at one time, wait a minute, Victor Mason played in the percussion section. Victor Mason, Lindsay.
So now, were you in the section with Victor Mason?
Yes, I was a year ahead of him. He came from Callaway. Yeah, Man, he was the first person to play quads in the band, and he had his own set. He brought his own drums to play. Yeah, sure.
Wow. Now that's history right there.
Yeah, yeah, and he became, he was in law enforcement, criminal justice major, just like Lindsey Horton. He became like a chief of police in Jackson at one time. I think he's chief of police at Jackson State now. He might be, unless he
Victor
retired.
Mason.
No, Lindsey Horton. Now, Victor Mason, unfortunately, he passed away.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
He passed away. But Lindsey Horton was chief of police for a time at Jackson, and then he retired, and then they called him to be police, chief at Jackson State. I believe it was, or head of security or something of that nature. I saw him a few years ago, and he hadn't changed a bit. He's still, just lighthearted, jovial, just the friendliest he ever want to be. Yeah.
Hey, well, that's good to know that members of the section have went on to do great things, and everybody in Jackson knows the name Victor Mason. I mean, you can't. And as a matter of fact, he marched in the alumni band in 2017, but he marched on snare drum.
Yeah. Okay.
He marched on snare drum. Actually, he was right next to me in the stands.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. But to know that he was the first person to play quads,
he was the first one that I ever knew to play, because they had Timbales, a guy from Greenfield, played, but he was out of the band by this time. And then we went, a few years without any of that kind of stuff. Just like the quads they got down to play in between those, like with Death March, we didn't have that. It was just quiet. It was and everything was quiet.
Oh wow.
But it had a certain effect on the crowd, because when I was in high school and they'd be behind the buildings, they coming into the stadium, and then when you start hearing that, it was like, to identify which band, you knew it was Jackson State, because they really sounded like thunder. Bass drum played that part. Vroom. And then it was just silent, because just chap, 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 but you couldn't hear that up in the stands. And then all of a sudden you hear it again, and it was real exciting.
Right. So how do you view the section today, the modern War and Thunder? What do you think about them?
Man, I love them. I love looking at them. To me, it's the best section in all college band, because the series sound really great. They refined it. They play it, what I'm gonna say, better than what we did, because with years, you're gonna refine things and change things for the better, but also the visual effects that they do, you just can't beat it. You cannot beat it. The visual effects, the movements that they have, man, they're just outstanding. And then to know that those are real musicians, because I've through the years, I've heard some of them play piano or other instruments, and I said, man, this cat got it. I mean, they really got it right now. It's the best I've seen.
Oh yeah, some of the most talented people in the whole band are in the percussion section. I came in with guys who were multi-instrumentalists, guys who played in bands, bass guitar, of course, drum set, but keys, like you said, so, even myself, I played a little bit of keys, and I primarily focused on vocals after I left Jackson State. So yeah, and I dropped a couple projects, producing and all of that. So a lot of people don't know that about drummers. They just think we tapping on stuff. They don't.
Right. It's some guys, man, can play several instruments. John Alford, I can mention some that were in the group Windchime with us. John Alford, bass drummer, he played keyboard. The one I mentioned, Crow, Kenneth Marsh, he's one of the best basses you ever want to hear. And Forrest Garden, he can play. If you put it in front of him, he can play it. I put it like that. He's got a lot of soul, but he's got a lot of not just rhythm, but he's a good vocalist too. He's a very good vocalist. Those guys, man, they were really. And Gene Bradley, he came a year later, and to me, Gene Bradley was the best snare drummer I had ever seen. High school, college, anywhere. He was just good. He came from the coast, course style, but he made it work.
Wow. Well, yeah. Well, hey, look, again, I just like to thank you for all of your contributions and thank you for providing this history lesson. Because as I said, Warren Thunder, October 23rd, 1971, that's our birthday. So that makes us 50 years going on 51 years.
Wow.
October 2022. And it's just been, I've been on a quest to get the history correct about us so that anybody that has misconceptions about our foundation, what we did, what we're about, we can clear it all up and let people know the truth about things. And who better to talk to than someone who was there in those early days. So I just want to thank you for providing all of the information that you have provided today. And if there was one last thing that you would like to leave with our audience, if you wanted to leave a message for musicians or just people in general, what would that be?
Get your kids involved in music. If they're not already in sports or something, even if they are in sports. My roommate was one of the best basketball players, in the state in his time, but he was a trumpet player. And everybody calls him Red. He was one of my roommates from freshman and sophomore year. But he was an excellent trumpet player and is to this day. But even if you are in sports, try to get your kids involved in music. Preferably, I like, I'm partial to drums and percussion, but whatever instrument, because these kids are so smart today. They got the internet and they got ways of learning. But if you get them involved in music, you're going to have a better time raising your kids, I promise you.
Yes, sir. So get your kids involved in music. I agree 1,000%. Music has changed my life. I've been involved in elementary on up, throughout college in some way, shape, or form in music. And I'm telling you, it's great for brain development.
Mm-hmm.
If you get involved at a young age, things that you can comprehend in other facets of your life can come from music.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Cross. We appreciate you for joining us. And we'll have to sit down and do this again one of these days. Do you have anything coming up soon? Maybe something that you would like the people to know about?
Not really. Like you said, I never did present that book of 32. So maybe I'll be presenting that soon. But I was thinking that I was about to let Mr. Dr. Little know that, I would like to propose actually putting a handwritten copy of Cross Tight and Cross Confusion in the drum room, along with the picture of Aaron Thompson, myself, and Tighthead Dwight Meredith in the percussion room. Because I hear people talking about us so much. It's not nothing to blow up about us, but people can learn about us because they're asking questions all the time, like yourself. People ask questions about us, and especially those guys, especially Aaron Thompson. I mean, he's the keystone. He got everything started. So Dwight and I, we kind of came on his shoulders, but he's the main guy.
So you have the original copy of the original score to Cross Tight and Cross Confusion?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wow. I'd love to see that.
Yes.
I would love to see that. I would love to see it. I even if it's not the original, I'd like to get that and get you to sign it for me.
Yeah, because it was pencil, so it's kind of smudgy. So, I'm going to have to redo it, and so that you could see it real good. And Dr. Liddell had the last copy of the series. He had the last copy because he showed it to me when he was still band director there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. And these are just copies because I know that some of these copies had floated around for a while. But the way the learning system is in any college band, you know, you just don't pull out a sheet for every cater. Most of them don't, but they're starting to now because it's easier to write percussion music. You can play onto a pad and it writes it out for you. So it's much easier now.
Right. But that original score of Kraus Tight and Kraus Confusion, that put in a frame, oh man, that would be really something to see. If you could frame that and put that somehow in a case or something in the music hall, that would really be a historical piece right there.
Well, that's on my bucket list.
Yeah. But hey, if you need me to help you do any of that stuff when it comes to preserving anything concerning War and Thunder, you please let me know, and I'll be happy to help you in any way that I can.
Okay, sure thing.
Way that I can. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Kraus. It's been a pleasure. It's really been a pleasure.
Enjoy talking to you.
All right, have a good night. And everybody, until next time, peace.